You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Boy, everybody's running around here like a chicken with their head cut off. You'd think we'd never done this before, folks. The girls are not here to do the pledge, and Doyle is looking for a key piece of equipment that we need to take calls later. Isn't it incredible? And here it is. Okay. Thank you, Doyle.
All righty.
Okay. Well, just to give you a little lowdown on what's going on, folks, and let you know how bad this economic crisis really is. I'm going to give you the statistics, hot off the presses, so to speak. Now, I took these off the stock exchange before it closed, so they could be up or down a little bit, but believe me, folks, this is right on the money. Even if they close a little higher or lower than what we have here today, the percentages are still going to work out right on the money. All around the world, the economy of all the different countries, I don't care which countries they are in deep trouble. Many exchanges have crashed. Many economies are no longer existent, like in Russia. In Japan, the banks are no longer solvent. The government is trying to bail them out. And in this country, a huge, tremendous, many billions of dollar mutual fund went down the tubes and was bailed out with a huge several billion-dollar loan. But here's the figures. So when you hear these figures, you go figure. And if you can't figure enough to get ready, then heaven help you, because I don't know how to do it if you don't see the need for it. And I think you had better really reassess your position and your thoughts and where you stand on all of this if you have not prepared for a tremendous, hard few years ahead. The American exchange, that's the American exchange, in July was 755. Today was 560 when I took it off the exchange. It lost 195 points, which represents 26% of its entire value just since July. 26% of the value of the American exchange just since July, a little over 2 months, has gone up in smoke. The NASDAQ over-the-counter exchange, in July was 2,030 points. Today it was 1,343 points, lost 687 points, representing 34% of its value disappeared in just a little over 2 months. The Standard & Poor's 100 in July was 585. Today it's 460, lost 125 points, representing 22% of its total value. The Standard & Poor's 500 in July was 1,195 points. Today was 926, lost 269 points, representing 23% of its total value. The New York Stock Exchange. This is the New York Stock Exchange. In July was 602 points. today was 464 points, lost 138 points, representing a loss of 23% of its total value. The Dow Jones Industrial Average in July was 9,377. 9,377. Today was 7,491 when I pulled these figures off the exchange. Lost a total of 1,886 points, representing 21% of its total value. That's a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen, that has disappeared from the economy. Gone. Up in smoke. And you wonder why? I'm telling you what I'm telling you. It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse, folks. So you had better hunker down. You had better prepare for some hard, and I do mean some hard times. In the meantime, I will attempt to open your minds and reveal to you some of the esoteric meaning behind what you read as literal meaning in the mysteries. And you will be amazed if you listen very carefully. You might learn something. I hope that you do. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to do one of the things that I love to do most. That's to part the veil and peek behind the shroud of mystery that hides the secret religion of the ancient brotherhood. That which people like Malleus Maleficarum believe in. Albert Pike, Alfred Boyd Kuhn, Manly P. Hall, George Bush, William Jefferson Clinton. And you will begin, I guarantee you, if you listen carefully, and if you can think, you will begin to see the light. You see, they believe that the Western world has too long and fatuously labored under the delusion that a pious and devout disposition fulfills the whole requirement of true religion. Not so, they say. Ancient sagacity knew that piety without intelligence or religion without philosophy was insufficient and even dangerous. It knew that general good intent was not safe from aberrancy, folly, and fanaticism unless it was directed by the highest powers and resources of the mind. And remember always that this is what they believe does not make it true. And the mind itself, they say, had to be fortified with specific knowledge of the nature of the cosmos and of man and the relation between the two. Following the dictum of the sage Hermes Trismegistus that the vice of a soul is ignorance, the virtue of a soul is knowledge, the Scriptures of old inculcated the precept that with all man's getting, he must first get wisdom and understanding. And these were related to his well-being as health to his navel and marrow to his bones, and would alone give him a crown of eternal life. These things were pronounced more precious than all the things that he could desire. The Council of Illuminati therefore laid down their systems of cosmology and anthropology, which have become, by immemorial tradition, the Bibles of humanity, universally reverenced, and in them were given the ordinances of life, the constitution of the cosmos, the laws governing both nature and mind, and they still constitute the Magna Carta of all human action guided by intelligence, for they were the first institutes embodying the Principia and Fundamenta of all moral behavior, the only true chart and compass to guide human effort in a line of harmony with an overshadowing divine plan of evolution for the cosmos. The corruption and final loss of the basic meaning of these Scriptures has been, in the whole of time, they believe, the greatest tragedy in human history. Like Shakespeare's tide, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune, but omitted casts all the rest of life in shoals and quicksands, the wreckage of the esoteric gnosis in the centuries following Plato's day, culminating in the debacle of all philosophical religion about the 3rd century of Christianity's development and ushering in 16 centuries of the Dark Ages, has thrown all religion out of basic relation to true understanding and caused it to breed an endless train of evils, fanaticisms, bigotries, idiosyncrasies, superstitions, wars, and persecutions that more than anything else blacken the record of man's historic struggle toward the light. And if you understand that portion of their philosophy, then you know why they hate Orthodox Jews, fundamentalist Christians, and members of the Nation of Islam. They believe that the most frightful of all historical barbarities owes its incidence directly to the decay of ancient philosophical knowledge and the loss of vision and virtue that would have attended its perpetuation. So what then must be the importance of all of this information that they say restores to the Scriptures of ancient wisdom the lost light of their true original meaning? In a very real to them, and direct way, the salvation of culture and a free spirit in the world is contingent upon this restoration of the ancient intelligence to modernity. And thus you see the springing up of the old pagan religions in the New Age movement and in other organizations and movements throughout the world. You see, they believe that for man at this age, he's had new and mighty powers of nature suddenly placed in his hands, but yet he lacks the spiritual poise and sagacity to use them without calamity, the message in the movie 2001. Most strangely, the control of the lower physical, natural, or brute forces by the mind, or reason, was the one central situation primarily and fundamentally dealt with in the sage tomes of antiquity. And to effect that control in a perfect balance and harmony, and to train the reasoning intellect in the divine art of it, was the aim and end of the arcane philosophy which I have revealed to you as the mysteries. Ideology in the Western world has endlessly vacillated back and forth between the cult of the inner spirit and engrossment in objective materialism, while ancient philosophy taught that the true path of evolutionary growth, if you believe in such a thing, was to be trodden by an effort that united the forces of the spirit with those of the world, the lower disciplined by the higher. The whole gist of the esoteric, or hidden, or secret doctrine was the study and mystery of the powers engaged in working out the evolutionary advance so that the aspirant, or initiate, might be able to align his cultural effort in consonance with the requirements of the problem and the end to be achieved. Without this guiding data and this evolutionary perspective, modern man, they believe, is totally at a loss how to focus his endeavor and is unable to point his direction in line with anything more fixed and basic than his next immediate objective of apparent desirability. In other words, they aspire to social engineering. He has neither a knowledge of his origin, a chart of his path, an inventory of his capacities, or a vision of his goal. Hence he travels the long road, still a benighted wanderer without compass. He can but recoil from one mistaken plunge after another, learning sporadic lessons from pain and misfortune, the way that most people learn, the way of the sheeple. The ancient torch that was lighted for his guidance, he has let burn out. You see, this lamp was the body of ancient philosophy. In this critical epoch in the life of the world, this philosophy proclaims afresh the message of what they believe to be the lost truth, the lost word, the lost phallus of Osiris, the lost light, if you will. They believe that there were three ancient and long discredited sciences that have had a surprising renaissance in popular fancy and scientific interest. One that I have struggled to teach you for many years is symbolism. The other two are alchemy and astrology, which are absolutely worthless and useless to any and all of you without a knowledge and a deep, abiding knowledge of the first, symbolism. You see, you read the alchemical works as if they were literal truths, but they are esoteric tomes bearing a hidden message. And astrology is the great metaphor of the hidden religion of the mysteries. And they never used it to foretell the future. That was for the profane, the uninitiated, the ignorant, who believed that a great happening in the sky would foretell some great happening on earth. Astrology has particularly come into a general vogue, but ladies and gentlemen, on a basis which still inclines conservative positivism in science and scholarship to regard it as allied closely with popular superstition. In its predictive or fortune-telling aspect, it is generally looked at askance, because that has absolutely nothing to do with it. It is, in fact, a hoax, a con job. The ages-old machinations of what we used to call mediums today are more likely called psychics or channelers, but nevertheless, hoaxes they are, and con men and con women who happily take your money, listen to you talk a little bit, and then from that read your present and your future. Anyone who understands human nature can do those things. But you see, there is another side on which it has pertinence and value that has not been recognized in the modern revival, and on which perhaps the mysteries believe is its most legitimate claim to consideration, and this is its function as symbolic theology, as I've been telling you for years. unquestionably cosmic operation, cosmic significance, lie behind the 12 constellations of the zodiac and the 36 or more other stellar configurations. The planisphere, or chart of the heavens, was doubtless the first of all Bibles, pictorially edited, since man could not write and had no printing presses, and since over a period of time oral history tended to be changed or forgotten. They planted their beliefs in the great constellations of the heavens, to be passed on forever and ever and ever. Not quite simply and directly, but intrinsically, all Bibles are amplifications and elaborations of the original volume of ideography, first written on the open face of the sky, charted in the zodiac and heavenly maps, and later transferred to earth and written in scrolls and parchments. Man was instructed to fashion his new body of spiritual glory after the pattern of things in the heavens. The heavenly, or zodiacal man, and a graph of the structure and history of this celestial personage was sketched by the enlightened sages in the configurated star clusters. You see, zodiac comes from the Greek word zodion, a small living image, signifying that it is a graph of the microcosmic life of man, which is cast in the form of the macrocosmic life of the universe, or of God. In the New Age movement, it is known as above, so below. You've all heard it. Man's own small body is a replica of this body of God, made in its image and likeness, according to the beliefs of the esotericism of the secret religion. The vast frame of cosmic man was outlined in the scroll of the heavens, the solar systems and galaxies being living cell clusters in his immense organism, and thus pantheism was born, as they believed that everything was linked and had an effect upon everything else. Thus squishing an ant as one walked down the road could, they believed, have some effect upon some far distant future. A deal of this adumbrative symbology, elucidating theological doctrinism, is set forth in the body of the works of people like Manly P. Hall, Alfred Boyd Kuhn, Albert Pike, and many others. But there is a group of its data that strikes so deeply into the heart of general theology that it is given at the outset for the sake of its overwhelming impressiveness to most, if not all, initiates of the Brotherhood. You see, they believe that it proves to be so conclusive an evidence that biblical theology rests more solidly than has ever been believed on zodiacal backgrounds, that its presentation must be, admittedly, a matter of great moment. It traces the unsuspected significance of two of the 12 signs, Virgo and Pisces, in the very heart of the New Testament narrative. So let the listener picture before him the ordinary zodiac with the house of Virgo at the western equinox point and that of Pisces directly opposite on the eastern side. The simple fact that they stand 6 months apart will presently be seen to assume great importance in gospel determination if you understand and believe the esoteric message that those of the Brotherhood believe is encoded and written below the literal interpretation of the Bible. This exposition must begin with a puzzling and hitherto unexplained item of ancient religious myth, that the Christs, that's plural, Christs, the sun gods, the Messiahs, all were depicted as having two mothers. Now how, one asks, could there possibly be rational significance in this? It has been put aside as just some more of the mythical rubbish and nonsense of early paganism. but the profundity of pagan intelligence, hiding sublime cosmic truth or a hidden story under glyph and symbol, has not been dreamed of by most of you. And I'm telling you, you had better not only dream of it, but seek it out and study it. The depiction should not have created incredulity, seeing that the gospel Jesus himself, the dramatic figure of the divine principle in man, announced it categorically in declaring to Nicodemus that, quote, "Ye must be born again," end quote. Nicodemus asked if this means that we must enter a second time into our mother's body and experience a second birth in the natural manner. But Jesus replies that we, quote, "must be born of water and the Spirit," end quote. Attention must be directed to the fact that the Latin word spiritus, translated spirit in many passages of the Bible, means as well air or breath. One of the great keys to Bible meaning is the series of the four elements of ancient mythicism, which are earth, water, air, and fire. And if you've read anything ever of the alchemists, you are acquainted with those four elements. The body of the physical or natural man was conceived as being composed of the two lower, earth and water, while air and fire, representing mind and spirit, commingled to make the higher or spiritual man. Was never meant to be taken literally. Jesus' statement to Nicodemus, then, could have been rendered born of water and air. And John the Baptist uses three of the four elements when he states that he, the forerunner of the Christos, and therefore a type of the lower natural man, indeed baptizes us with water, omitting earth, but that there cometh after him one higher than himself, who shall baptize us with the Holy Spiritus, air, and with fire. Jesus thus affirms that we have two births, necessitating two mothers, and John the Baptist adds that we must have two baptisms. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper, and tonight, you're in school. Ladies and gentlemen, as you listen to tonight's lesson in your in your education of what lies behind the veil of the mysteries, Freemasonry, the Ancient Order, the Rosicrucians, the Lodges of the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta, etc. Don't get what I am giving you as something that you must believe or that I believe, for that is not the case. And whether it is or is not is of no matter whatsoever. You cannot fight a battle unless you know your enemy. And you cannot know your enemy unless you understand your enemy, his life, his morals or lack of morals, his religion or lack of religion, his philosophy, his tactics, what he reads, where he obtains his spiritual sustenance, if he has such a thing. And when these people are in power, ladies and gentlemen, it makes absolutely no difference what you believe in the great scheme of things when you are dealing with these people. You must understand what they believe, for if they have the power, what they believe is what will affect you. It is what they believe that they will bring into law. It is what they believe that they will use to enslave you or to set you free. It depends upon who it is and what they believe. And I can guarantee you, while this nation may have begun with a majority of its adherents and citizens worshiping the God of the Christian Bible, it is not that way today. The men who hold the power in the halls of government at all levels, city, county, state, and federal, believe in the philosophy that I am giving you now. And so you had better take heed and pay attention. And at this point, we have to go into a discussion of God, and before I can do that, lest you misunderstand and take literally what Malleus Maleficarum was telling you the other night on this broadcast, that he was a Christian and that he believes in God, making or trying to make you believe that it is the God of the Christian Bible. He is a liar. He lies by omission and by twisting, and he lies by mingling or commingling terms, which you, the sheeple, take to mean that he believes what you believe. And that is not true. So I will attempt now to acquaint you with the heart and soul of one of the core beliefs, one of the root beliefs of the mysteries. They believe in two fires, the supernal and the infernal. They believe that it is impossible, absolutely impossible, to present the one in entire disseverance from the other. And the background for the clarification of this aspect of the interpretation can be readily set up, and I will cover all of that information in subsequent broadcasts. But the whole doctrine of hellfire has fallen so infinitely remote from even the outskirts of the true understanding of what they believe that I've got to set it before you so that you can grapple with it in good earnest now. They believe that the deplorable state of modern exegesis in this segment of theology impels one to a vehement expression of disgust at the harrowing grotesquerie of rendering which a comparison of ancient esoteric meaning with current superstition so readily excites. You see, but this situation has to be evident as a general matter and should need but little reinforcement beyond the revelation of gaping chasms of difference between the old and the present readings. When you read these things, you read them literally. Yet this theology of a hell of fiery torment has suffered such an unconscionable distortion from its primary bearing, and has afflicted the mind of mankind with so outrageous a delusion that every consideration points to the necessity of a vigorous handling in the interests of sanity and social benefit. You see, before Dante wrote his Inferno, nobody ever heard of a devil with a pointed tail and horns and writhing souls burning forever in the fires of hell, being poked by pitchforks and in various manners and ways caused to suffer for all eternity. The perversion of original teaching regarding the lower fire has cast over the collective mind of the Western world the foulest hypnotic obsession which it has ever suffered. The strangling tentacles of this theological devilfish have spread over the whole of Christendom and have compressed the spiritual genius of that segment of mankind into the coldest and most inhumane bigotry known to history. These are their own words, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll tell you where some of it comes from later. You see, they hate you if you are a Christian, if you are an Orthodox Jew, if you belong to the nation of Islam, if you are a Muslim. They hate you, especially if you are a Catholic. They hate you. They believe that for ages the doctrine in its misconceived form has deprived the Christianized world of its reason and opened doors to the entry of every superstition. They believe it has snuffed out the native spark of human brotherhood and brought between man and man the lurid glare of its own devilish mischief. For the fiercest fires of persecution and fiendish cruelty ever lighted upon earth flared out under the impulsion of the fantastic theological teaching that the acts of one's brother may be the impious machination of the devil. They look at it as too gruesome and ghoulish a chapter of horrors to even linger upon. Yet the same philosophical benightedness out of which this atrocious monster of diabolism and demonism has emerged has never to this day been dispelled by the light of wisdom. A more sensitive humanity of the present, sickened by the ghastly spectacle of past tortures and holocausts, inspired by fiendish zeal, has tried to drop the subject as far as possible out of sight, and has imposed a taboo upon its exploitation in religious quarters. This refers directly to the Inquisition of the Catholic Church during what is known as the Dark Ages. And they believe that the darkness has not yet been dissipated, and the monster is still capable, on provocation, of glaring fiercely out of the murks. And ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you that that monster is real. It is there. I have seen it, and some of you have heard it in the calls made to this broadcast and others. Those who are so religiously zealot that they would burn at the stake again anyone who dared to disagree with their own personal bigotry, their dogma, their religion, their race, even. So there are some things about the mysteries that I do agree with, and that is one. Further, they believe the light that would have enabled the Christian world to descry the beast in his true outlines and character has never been rekindled since it was extinguished about the 3rd century. And those of you who have studied religion know what happened in the 3rd century. That's when they met at the Council of Nicaea, condemned all the books that disagreed with the dogma of the emperor or pope, and chose the books that would make up what is now known as the Christian Bible in the Catholic Church. Now, they believed that had that light been available, it would have revealed that the fiery dragon of the pit, and listen to this carefully, folks, because this is one of the key elements of the beliefs hidden behind the veil of the mysteries. It is what Malleus Maleficarum alluded to when he called in on this broadcast that Monday night, when he said that he believed in God and that he was a Christian. This is what he believes. This is the truth of it. You see, but he was speaking in a metaphor even then. He believes that had that light been available, it would have revealed that the fiery dragon of the pit was none other than God himself. His face begrimed with smoke, his features distorted by the grimaces of the beast through whose eyes he looked out upon this strange world, and his countenance luridly alight with the smudgy flare of the earthy furnace. Many of you have read Paradise Lost. Well, Milton's lakes of seething fire in Paradise Lost are a travesty of truth, unless, as the mysteries believe, it is taken purely as the symbology they are. You see, they believe, Malleus Maleficarum believes, Albert Pike believes, Manly P. Hall believes, Alfred Boyd Kuhn believes, George Bush believes, all of these people believe, William Jefferson Clinton believes, Newt Gingrich believes, Bob Dole believes. They believe Satan is the God himself on earth. They believe Satan is God on earth. They believe that it's incontestable. They believe that it is proven by the very name. The descending God was the light bringer, Lucifer, the bright and morning star, which is precisely the character assumed by the Jesus of the biblical revelation. Therefore, they believe Jesus was Satan himself, God on earth. They believe the Christian devil, the hated serpent of evil, Satan, is Lucifer, the God of light on earth, the bright and morning star, Jesus, Prometheus, the benefactor of mankind, God himself. That's what they believe. That's what they believe, ladies and gentlemen, and I could not go on where they speak of God without revealing to you exactly what it is that these people mean when they say God.
My life goes on in endless above lamentation. I either reveal the
information, ladies and gentlemen, which I have just departed to you, was written by Alvin Boyd Kuhn, Ph.D., in his book entitled The Lost Light, An Interpretation of Ancient Scriptures. He was a theosophist. He was one of the most prolific writers and revealers of the esoteric religion. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. He was a member of the Order of Rosicrucian and many others. He was a member of the Illuminati. He says it in his writings. All other Freemasons and members of the Brotherhood of Man who worship behind the veil in the lodges with no windows have all referenced Alvin Boyd Kuhn. They have written that he is one of the greatest of the 1,000 points of light. And indeed, he does not only speak for them, but he is the source of much of the knowledge that most of them possess. And so when Malleus Maleficarum said that he believed in God and he was a Christian, if you understand the definition of his terms and you agree with those terms, then yes, he does believe in God and he is a Christian. But make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, he does not believe in your God, nor does he believe in your Christ or your Christianity. Behind the veil. The 1,000 points of light. Do you really believe, ladies and gentlemen, that great men get up on platforms and make speeches and throw these terms and these words around? And when you question them, they say, oh, it's just, we just threw it in there. Doesn't mean anything. Baloney. Every word that they use. Every word inserted in every speech has a great deal of meaning to someone and is placed there specifically to convey a message. When George Bush spoke of the New World Order and the 1,000 points of light, he was talking to his brothers, heralding the dawn of a new age, the new dawn, the age of Horus risen in a new world order. A world where the old religion is to be cast out. Where everything is to be cleansed and made anew in the image of the socialist utopian plan for the world. You see, if you would just go to your Bible and forget everything else that anyone ever wrote in that book and just read the words in red, you'll see that Jesus tried to tell you everything that I'm telling you tonight. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Seek ye the truth, and the truth will make you free. What is the new age? It's the age of Aquarius. What is the age of Aquarius? It is symbolized by the water bearer. And that has tremendous significance. Now, I'm not telling you to read the Bible to become a Christian or to injure your sensibilities if you're not a Christian. What I'm telling you is there's a message there written in red that no matter who you are or what religion, some of them are religion, or what religion you belong to, there is a message there that if you can see and if you can hear, there's a lot of reference to that in there, And what that means is if you understand the symbolic, esoteric language so that you can read what is hidden below the literal interpretation and stop listening to these maniacs standing up behind pulpits telling you all these lies. Because that's what they are. Everyone is deceived, even the initiates in the mysteries. And Albert Pike admits it in Morals and Dogma. He says that at each level of initiation, they are presented with the same symbolic story, but each degree has a different interpretation. So what are they to believe? He says in Morals and Dogma they never learn the truth until they reach the 30th degree when they are told that Lucifer is their God. And he doesn't mean that there is a red devil with horns and a pointed tail running around in some hellfire in the center of the earth, poking people in the butt with a spear. It is a metaphor for even deeper esoteric revelations. Whether you believe them or not, you had better learn them, you had better study them, because these people hold the reins of power. These are the people who control the atomic bombs, ladies and gentlemen. These are the people who built the Soviet Union. Now we'll continue, because now we can talk about God in their language, and you can understand that it is not your God they are discussing. See, they believe that since man's spirit is an indestructible fragment of God's own mighty spirit, truly a tiny spark of that cosmic intelligence and love which we call the mind of God, the ancients typified the divine element in man by fire. Remember, I told you that fire is the metaphor for the intellect. And in contrast, the lower or human element by water. The human element. And thus great expanses of water represent large numbers of people. Souls occupying human or material bodies. The fiery soul of man is housed in a tenement of flesh and matter, which is 7/8 water by actual composition. The crossing of rivers and seas and the immersion of solar heroes in water in olden mythologies and the rite of baptism in theology signified nothing beyond the fact of the soul's immersion in a physical body of water, nature in its successive incarnations. You see, they believe in incarnation. They believe in past lives. Lieutenant Colonel James Bogrites believes in past lives. He sent his son for past life regression. He talked about it on the air and said his son in his past life was a soldier just like him. He said that he believes in reincarnation. And in the same breath, out the other side of his mouth, he tells you he's a Christian. I've been telling you for years, James Bogrites is an initiate, a warrior monk of the mysteries, a member of the Knights Templar. He is a Freemason. And probably much more. They believe that man is distinctly a creature compounded of two natures, a higher and a lower, a spiritual and a sensual, a divine and a human, a mortal and an immortal, and finally a fiery and a watery conjoined in a mutual relationship in the organic body of flesh. And in the New Age movement, they take this literally and believe that the soul can actually leave the body and another soul come in and occupy it. They call these walk-ins. Heraclitus said, man is a portion of cosmic fire imprisoned in a body of earth and water. And speaking of man, Plato said, through body, it is an animal. Through intellect, it is a god. Everyone for hundreds and thousands of years have pondered the meaning of the Sphinx, and no one ever understood exactly what it meant until I told you on this broadcast. The Sphinx personifies this principle in the mysteries. The Sphinx, obviously, was built by one of the ancient lodges of the mystery religion of Babylon. The Sphinx is put there to remind man that he is an animal who can think. An animal endowed with the fire of intellect. An animal within whose body dwells a soul. That is the mystery of the Sphinx. That is the only mystery of the Sphinx. That is the only message that the Sphinx can deliver. And I have never read it in any book, nor have I seen it spoken or written anywhere. It is what I have learned through the study of the mysteries. And I'm right. And the Brotherhood believes that this explanation is the truest basic description of man that anthropology can present. They believe that all problems spring from that foundation and are referable for solution back to it. They believe that man is then a natural man and a God. You see? In combination. They believe that our natural body gives the soul of man its baptism by water. Our nascent spiritual body is to give us the later baptism by fire. We are born first as the natural man, then as the spiritual. Or we are born first by water and then by fire. They believe of vital significance at this point are the two statements by St. Paul, and I quote, "That was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural." And he also said, "First that which is natural, then that which is spiritual." And again he says, "For the natural man comprehendeth not the things of the Spirit of God, neither can he." You see, I told you several years ago on a broadcast of the Hour of the Time that St. Paul, as he is known in the Catholic Church, or Paul, as he is known in the Protestant religion, was a member of the mysteries. Everything that he wrote is written in the esoteric language. You see, if all that is true, then man cannot comprehend the things of the Spirit of God if he is the natural man. And as Paul says, neither can he. And of course not. For if that is true, he is not yet in that higher kingdom of evolution, and he must be transformed, transfigured, lifted up into a superior world of consciousness before he can cognize spiritual things. They believe evolution will thus transform him and nothing else will, and this is symbolized in the initiation in the lodge, when they are symbolically suffered a death in a coffin and then raised by the grip of the lion's paw and given a new name and thus said to be born again. Christians run around, they go to church, they become baptized, they become a member of a church. Then they fall out of grace, fall out of church, fall away from God, fall away from Jesus. And then they come back. They sit in church, listen to some preacher, they get some feeling in their chest, they rise up, run forward, and they're said to be born again. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. The Brotherhood uses astrological bases for portraying cosmic truths. The ancients localized the birth of the natural man in the zodiacal house of Virgo, and that of the spiritual man in the opposite house of Pisces. And you're listening to WBCQ, Monticello, Maine, USA. So according to the mysteries, these then were the houses of the two mothers of life. The first was the Virgin Mother, Virgo, the primeval symbol of the Virgin Mary, thousands of years B.C., Virgo gave man his natural birth by water and became known as the water mother. Pisces, the fishes by name, gave him his birth by the fish and was denominated the fish mother. The virgin mothers are all identified with water as symbol, and their various names, such as Mary, spelled capital M-E-R-I, Mary, spelled capital M-A-R-Y, Venus, spelled capital V-E-N-U-S, which means born of the sea foam, Tiamat, Typhon, and Thalith, which is all Greek for sea, are designations for water. On the other side, there are the fish avatars of Vishnu, such as the Babylonian Ionis, or Dagon, and the Assyrian goddess Atargatis was called the fish mother. Virgo stood as the mother of birth by water, or the birth of man, the first, of the earth, earthy. Pisces stood as the mother of birth by spirit or fire, or the birth of man, the second, described by St. Paul as the Lord from heaven. Virgo was the water mother of the natural man. Pisces, the fish mother of the spiritual man. And so, eventually there must be brought out an unrevealed significance of the fish symbol in the zodiac and in mythical religion. For it is of astonishing import, you see, in the mysteries. Water is the type of natural birth because all natural birth proceeds in and from water, even human. All first life originated in the seawater according to the theory of evolution, which came right out of this philosophy from the mystery schools preached to the world by a brother of the Illuminati known as Charles Darwin. The fish is a birth in and from the water, and it stands patently as the generic type of organic life issuing out of inorganic. The fish typifies life embodied in a physical organic structure. Organic life is born out of the water and is the first birth child of the water mother. And if organic life is in turn to become mother, its child will be mind and spiritual consciousness, son of the fish mother. In brief, water is the mother of natural physical being, and organic structure becomes the later mother of divine mind. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we do not tell you what to believe or how to believe it. We tell you the truth so that you can find your own way out of the darkness. so that you can find the truth, and so that if there truly is a light, you can determine which light is the true light, for they all say that theirs is the light. All of them. All of them. Ours is the light. I am the light. My way is the light. If you don't believe it, read it all. The way you get trapped in just one is that's the first one that anyone ever teaches you, or someone more persuasive comes along and persuades you that they are right. The truth, I think you may find, ladies and gentlemen, is that they are all in some aspects right and all in many aspects very wrong. You must discover what is right and what is wrong, because if you're not living your life in truth, then you are not living your life. You are living someone else's life. You're living in darkness, in lies, in deceit, in manipulation. Now, strangely enough, water is the type, ladies and gentlemen, of another thing which is still more germinal of life, namely matter. According to the mysteries, matter is the virgin mother of all life in the aboriginal Genesis. According to the mysteries, all things are generated in the womb of primordial matter, the old genetrix of Egyptian mythology. And according to the mysteries, it is by consideration of the nature of matter and its evolution that we are enabled to arrive at last at the true meaning of the double motherhood of life. For oddly enough, they believe matter is seen to exist in two states, in each of which it becomes mother of life at two different levels. Primordial matter, the sea of what seems to us empty space, is the first mother of all living forms. They believe that this is the primal abyss of the waters in Genesis, the source of all Darwinism. The Latin word for mother is our very word matter with one T left out, spelled M-A-T-E-R. And how close to matter is water. And organic structure is the second mother, parent of spiritual mind. All of the ancient books, ladies and gentlemen, always grouped the two mothers in pairs. All of the ancient books and the ancient philosophies said that they were called the two mothers, or sometimes the two divine sisters, or they were the wife and sister of the god under the names of Juno, Venus, Isis, Ishtar, Sybil, or Mylitta. In old Egypt, they were the first, Apt and Neith, and later Isis and Nephthys. Massey, the great esotericist, relates Neith to Net. Net. You heard us discussing the netters the other night. Not many people upon the face of this globe understand what it was that we were discussing. Not many people upon the face of this earth have ever heard the name netters as applied to a group. And it took me many, many years of study to figure out exactly who were the netters and what did it mean. Massey relates Neith to net, in effect, fish net. And in the Bible, it talks about the apostles casting their net into the sea. Clues to their functions were picked up in the great Book of the Dead. It says, Isis conceived him, Nephthys gave him birth. Or, Isis bore him, Nephthys suckled him, or reared him. The full sense of these statements was not discerned until they were scrutinized in the light of another key sentence which matched them. In the Book of the Dead it says, Heaven conceived him, the Tuat brought him forth. With this came the flash of clear insight into the mystery, for that which is to eventuate in the cycles of evolution as divine mind in an organic creature, man, is aboriginally conceived by divine ideation in the innermost depths of cosmic consciousness, or in the purely noumenal world, or again in the bosom of infinite spirit, where spirit is identical with pure undifferentiated matter. Now that's a very difficult concept to grasp, but it is mirrored in the Egyptian statement that Isis conceived him. Matter in its invisible inorganic state was the womb of the first conception. Isis is virgin, in effect pure matter, or matter sublimated to spiritual tenuity. The Tuat, on the other hand, is really earth, as the type of physical matter, or matter organic, aggregated into substantial forms, called by us physical matter. It is matter as substance, constituted and existent in the visible world in structural forms. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Isis was matter subsistent as empty space, and Nephthys was atomic matter, constituent of visible structural forms. The physical worlds, which we must now think of as floating in the sea of empty space like fish in the water, are the second form of matter, and their organic bodies of substantial matter give birth to the Logoi in the solar systems and to the Christos in man, according to the religion of the mysteries. So they believe that divine spirit is conceived in the womb of Isis, the first universal mother, and brought to birth in the womb of Nephthys, the second mother, the immediate incubator and gestator of its manifest expression. So you might paraphrase this situation by saying that a human child is first conceived in the love or mind of its parents, and later born from the womb of its physical mother. Thus life has two births and must of necessity have two mothers. The only problem with this is it was written when that is the purpose of sexual intercourse, was to produce a child. Not so today. This philosophy would not stand up. Would not stand up in any single bar in this nation. Because children are conceived every day without love, without thought, without mind of its parents, and indeed, after that meeting of the bodies, in many instances the parents never see each other again in the rest of their life. You see, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter what you believe. It's all flawed in some part. All of it. All of it. Because it has all been pinned by the hand of man, no matter who or what inspired it. So they believe that life is spiritually conceived and materially born, or man may be said to be born as a natural creature from spirit into matter, and born later as a spiritual God when he emerges from his baptism in the water of the body and re-enters the bosom of his Father. Or finally, he is born first as man by water, and reborn later as God by fire, and the first birth was depicted as taking place on the western side of the zodiac, in the house or womb of the Virgin Mother, Virgo, because in the west, the sun, the universal symbol of spiritual fire, descended into organic matter in its setting or incarnation. And so they believe man is born as natural man on the west, to be regenerated as spiritual man on the east. Horus, risen, the new dawn. The source of light, of knowledge, of intelligence. Spirit's descent on the west makes it man. Its resurrection on the east, like the summer sunrise, makes it deity or God again. This is the death and resurrection of the God in all religions. It is the reason for the sunrise service on Easter. It is incarnation and return to spirit. It is the descent of the Messiah into Egypt and his exodus back to Canaan. And there's more. Oh, yes. Further scrutiny of such data brings to light links of connection with the Bible. The chief one is found in the symbol of bread in connection with both Virgo and Pisces. You see, Pisces is the house of the fishes by name, but it is not commonly known that Virgo in astrological symbology was the house of bread. Virgo in astrological symbology was the house of bread. And this is indicated by several items of ancient typology. You see, many years ago, many centuries as a matter of fact, in the precession of the equinoxes, the end of the year was marked by the position of the great dog star Sirius, the mighty celestial symbol of the divinity in man in the mysteries. And precisely at midnight of December the 24th, it stood on the meridian line from the zenith to Egypt. At about the same moment there arose on the eastern horizon the constellation of the Virgin, bearing in her left arm the Christ child, symbol of the Christhood, coming to function in man, and in her right hand the great star Spica, which is Latin for a head or spike of wheat. As in spike training. Symbol of that same divinity coming as celestial food for man. Wheat. Bread. It must ever, ladies and gentlemen, be remembered that the gospel Jesus told us we had virtually to eat his body as food and drink his blood if we would inherit eternal life. So typism represented him as coming in the form of man, the babe Christ, and as food for man, the wheat. John speaks of the Christ principle in the words, quote, "This is that bread which came, this is that bread which came down from heaven." Now listen to me carefully. This is that bread which came down from heaven, that if a man eat of it, he shall hunger no more. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus broke a loaf into fragments and gave to his disciples, saying that it was his body broken for them. And then we have Virgo established as the house of bread and Pisces as the house of fish, but the characterization of the two houses must be brought along to a more specific evolutionary reference. What are these houses thus delineated? What does it mean? They are, according to the mysteries, as at first, the two states of matter, but how to be taken in immediate reference to the life of man on earth. They are, in the final stage of the meaning, man's body itself, which consists of matter in both its invisible and its visible forms. You see, for man has a natural body, according to these people, and a spiritual body. Man's body itself houses the two mothers. The body is this double house of bread and of fish. And the next link is seen when it is considered that this physical body is for the soul the house of death, and in its regenerative phase, the house of rebirth. And while the rose represents the soul in the ancient order, the Rosae Cruci, and the cross, the matter or the body, signifying the death of the soul crucified upon the cross of matter, It is the house into which the Spirit descends to its partial obscuration in the darkness of the grave of matter, into the night of death or incarnation, out of which it is to arise in a new birth or resurrection on the opposite side of the cycle, when the body dies and the soul is released from its prison of matter. A significant passage from the Book of the Dead recites, quote, "Who cometh forth from the dusk, and whose birth is in the house of death," end quote, referring to the incarnating soul. In a spiritual sense, the soul dies on entering the body in incarnation, according to these people, but has a new birth in it as it later resurrects from it. So the body is therefore the house of his death and rebirth, or the place of his crucifixion and resurrection. And truly, upon the soul's entering a new body, upon incarnation, all memory is erased and can be said to be death. The Egyptians had a name for the body as the locus of these transformations, which carry the central meaning of all theologies. This name now rises out of the dim mists of ancient Egyptian books to enlighten all modern Bible comprehension. This city of the body, with a son of soul, spelled S-U-N, of soul, sank to its death on the cross of matter to re-arise in a new birth, was called the city of the sun, or in Greek, Heliopolis. But in the Egyptian, Anu, spelled A-N-U. The name was given to an actual Egyptian city, where, ladies and gentlemen, the rites of the death, burial, and resurrection of Osiris or Horus, the two are the same depending upon whether the sun is setting or rising, were enacted each year. But the name bore a theological significance before it was given to a geographical town. You see, the name is obviously made up of Nu, spelled N-U, the name for the Mother Heaven, or empty space, or abyss of nothingness, and Alpha, privative meaning, as in thousands of words, not. So, capital A coupled with NU would then mean not nothingness, or a world of concrete actuality, the world of physical substantial manifestation. Precisely such a world it is in which units of virginal consciousness go to their death and then rise again. So all of you who think you've been born again, you haven't even begun to understand the meaning of the term. You have taken an esoteric philosophy and turned it into a literal meaning. Anu is then the physical body of man on earth. The soul descends out of the waters of the abyss of the Nun, N-U-N, or space in its undifferentiated unity, which is the sign and name of all things negative. The Nun is indeed our none, spelled N-O-N-E, or nothingness. Life in the completeness of its unity is negative. To become positively manifest, it must differentiate itself into duality, establish positive-negative tension, and later split up into untold multiplicity. And this, they say, brings out the significance of the biblical word multiply. Life cannot manifest itself in concrete forms until it multiplies itself endlessly. Unit life of deity must break itself up into infinite fragments in order to fill empty space with a multitude of worlds and beings of different natures. The primal sea, or mother, must engender a multitudinous progeny to spawn the limitless shoals of organic fish worlds. This, ladies and gentlemen, in the mysteries is the meaning of the promise given to Abraham that his seed should multiply
till it filled the earth with offspring countless as the sands of the seashore. And if life was symboled by bread as the first birth, and by fish as the second, then we might expect to find in old religious typology the allegory of a Christ figure multiplying loaves and fishes. So are you surprised to find that the Gospel Jesus does this very thing, multiplying the 5 loaves and the 2 small fishes to feed a multitude? You see, this could be astonishing enough in all conscience, but it yields in wonder to the next datum of comparative religion, which came to our notice as a further tie between the Bible and antecedent Egyptian mythology. Who among you can adequately measure the seriousness of the challenge which this item of scholarship presents to gospel historicity? For a discovery of sensational interest came to light when a passage was found in the Book of the Dead which gave to Anu the characteristic designation, quote, the place of multiplying bread, end quote. And here, in the long silent tomes of old Egypt, was found the original, the prototype of the miracle of the loaves and the fishes in the Gospels of Christianity. And the meaning, never before apprehended, had to be read into this New Testament wonder. And at last, we were instructed to catch in the miracle the sense that the physical body, as Anu, was the place where the corpus of the Christ's deific power was broken into an infinite number of fragments and distributed out among a multitude of creatures in hungered after a 3 days fast or deprivation of the food of spiritual life in their sojourn in the 3 kingdoms, the mineral, vegetable, and animal, before reaching the plane of mind. And here are all the elements of the inner meaning of the Christian Eucharist, the broken but multiplied fragments of the body of the God distributed to feed hungry humanity. And as humanity is composed of 12 groups of divine conscious units, there were gathered up 12 baskets of fragments, and this episode of the Christ's ostensible life is found to be Egyptian in origin and meaning and symbolic in character. And indeed, Christ was written about and spoken of and celebrated long before the Christ of Christianity ever appeared upon this earth. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we're going to leave you for tonight, because that gives you more than enough to think about. Now, I want to tell you once again, it doesn't matter if you believe this or not, or if I believe it or not. It matters not at all. For those who have the power in the world today, believe it. They believe it. And if they believe it, it will affect all of us, whether we believe it or not. What we believe makes no difference except in our own lives, in the world, and how the governments and powers and principalities rule us or enslave us. It makes a great deal of difference.